All right, today we're diving into something incredibly personal and honestly pretty powerful. We've got our hands on the diary of a patient who was navigating a really intense cycle of chemotherapy for leukemia. This gives us a raw, unfiltered look into the whole journey, physical, mental, all of it. And, it starts in a place that might really surprise you.
So get this. These are the patient's actual words from the day he was admitted to the hospital. For the moment, I feel quite serene. I mean, that's a surprising start, right? You'd expect fear or at least some anxiety, but nope, just calm. So you have to ask, where is all this serenity coming from?
And you know what? He had some solid reasons to feel that way. For one, he'd just gotten good news from his recent tests. Plus, the last round of chemo had actually worked like it was supposed to. He was also under the impression that this next cycle, this consolidation cycle, was going to be a bit lighter. He was even hoping he could maybe spend the break after chemo at home. So yeah, he was feeling optimistic, and that really sets the stage for, well, everything that happened next.
So you can picture it, right? He settles in. He knows the routine. He knows the staff. The plan seems pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Just a 3-day cycle of infusions, kicking off the next day. But this expected routine, it was about to get turned completely on its head.
Okay, so this is the moment. It's Thursday afternoon. The treatment is officially about to begin. The nurse comes in with the chemo drugs all prepped by the pharmacy. I mean, this is a totally standard procedure, something he's seen before. But for him, a quick casual glance at the paperwork, well, it's about to change everything.
And bam, there it is, the first big shock. That whole idea he had about this being a lighter cycle, totally wrong. Turns out the dose of the main drug, this thing called cytarabina, was almost double what he got last time. It's just, wow, a powerful reminder that in this world, your expectations can get flipped in a single second.
So you're probably wondering, what exactly is cytarabina? Well, it's a really powerful chemo drug. Its whole job is to go in, attack cancer cells, and just stop them from growing. It's basically the main weapon in this particular fight. And now he's about to get a double dose of it on what turns out to be a really grueling schedule.
Yeah, it wasn't just that the dose was stronger. It was the whole regimen. It was relentless, just around the clock. Think about this. A 3-hour infusion every 12 hours for 3 straight days. And the physical toll? Yeah, that started to show up almost right away.
Okay, so now we're moving from the regimen on paper to the reality of what it does to the human body. This incredibly intense schedule was having a very real impact, and all of it was being tracked by this piece of tech that basically became his constant companion.
The very first sign that something was up came pretty fast, like overnight. He suddenly gained 1.5 kilograms, which is about 3.3 pounds. And this isn't, regular weight gain. This is fluid retention. It's a huge red flag that his kidneys were really struggling to keep up with the chemo. His body was under a ton of stress, and the doctors immediately put him on a diuretic to help. And this thing right here, this is the machine that was delivering that powerful chemo. And our patient, being the curious guy he is, actually started looking into how it works. It's called a peristaltic pump, and it's pretty cool. It doesn't just rely on gravity. It actively squeezes the tube in this very precise way to control the flow rate. It's kind of mimicking how our own digestive system works. And this curiosity, it's a really central part of his story.
And that right there really brings us to the core of what this is all about. Here's a guy in a situation that is almost completely out of his control, right? So what does he do? He turns to information. He uses his curiosity not just to pass the time, but as a real tool to feel some sense of empowerment.
So his little investigation kicks off with this term he spots in his own medical report, trilinear dysplasia. He has no idea what it means. But instead of just sitting there and worrying, he starts researching it, and then he goes and asks his doctor about it directly. And the explanation he got was absolutely crucial. It turns out this really scary-sounding term wasn't the disease getting worse. It was actually an expected side effect of the chemotherapy itself. Basically, the treatment was causing some abnormal development in all 3 of his blood cell lines: white cells, red cells, and platelets. Still concerning, for sure, but it was an understood part of the process.
But of course, his quest for knowledge didn't just stop there. He hears about some study on how bone marrow recovers, and that sends him down this fascinating rabbit hole, leading him to explore one of the most fundamental, basic building blocks of our own biology.
He starts thinking about mitochondria, the power plants inside every single one of our cells. He's marveling at how they create all our body's energy and this totally fascinating fact that they have their own separate DNA from the rest of our cells. And get this, that mitochondrial DNA, it's passed down only from our mothers. It's just a way for him to shift his focus from the disease to the absolute wonder of biology itself.
And this quote from his diary, it just perfectly sums up his entire mindset. He says, "I have no control over the disease or the therapies, but I like to know well what is happening." He knows he can't control the cancer or the treatment, but what he can control is how much he understands about it. And that drive to know, to get the why behind everything, that becomes his anchor in all this chaos.
But here's the thing. Sometimes the more you learn, the more questions you have, and pretty soon he runs into a major contradiction. On one hand, you have the super sophisticated lab test, an immunophenotype exam, saying that 9% of his cells have anomalous characteristics. But on the other hand, his doctor is looking at the bone marrow under a microscope and sees no visible cancer cells at all. So which one do you believe? It's just a perfect example of the kind of uncertainty you can run into even with all our modern medicine.
So after 3 incredibly intense days, the chemo cycle is finally over. He gets the news on Sunday that he can go home. You'd think this would be a huge relief, right? A victory lap? But this time, it's not. Getting discharged is actually the start of a new, and in some ways even more dangerous part of the journey.
So let me tell you why this time was so different, so dangerous. After his previous chemo cycles, he was sent home when his blood counts were already starting to rise. He was on the upswing, getting stronger each day. But this time, he's being discharged while his blood counts are actively falling. They're plummeting. That means every single day he spends at home, he's actually getting weaker, more vulnerable, just waiting for the inevitable point where he has to be readmitted.
Later on, looking back in his diary, he sums up the whole experience in just a few stark numbers. 28 days in the hospital, 4 days with a fever, 5 days of chemo, 5 blood transfusions, and 11 platelet transfusions. I mean, these aren't just stats on a chart. They're a real quantifiable measure of the massive physical ordeal he just went through.
So it all leaves us with this one big question. This patient's diary, it's so much more than a medical log, right? It's really a testament to the power of knowledge, of curiosity. It makes you wonder, when you're facing something so uncontrollable, so huge, what role does curiosity play? It seems like maybe, just maybe, the simple act of trying to understand is its own form of power, its own way of taking back a little bit of control.